2024. It's only been a month, but is this the year of games that are kinda like other games, but also not like those games? And that maybe they can be kind of good or even better than the games that they were inspired from, but also not, and maybe kind of cash grabby, but also it's good competition for the consumer as a whole? Well, it remains to be seen. But as you might guess from the title and thumbnail, we're actually not talking about Power World today. I'm actually going to be covering the controversial but curious upcoming Kandyland game. For those of you that are unaware, Kandyland was originally an NFT project in the Web3 space that partnered with Golden Lane Studios, a phenomenal talent in animation and specifically that of animatronic horror. And I'll be honest, this trailer caught my eye, like it did a lot of people, with just how freaking beautiful it looks. Obviously, of course, before hearing about the project's origins in NFTs. Like, look at it. It looks so goddamn beautiful. Like, genuinely looks so good. And yet, there are still many unanswered questions about the impending release of the Kandyland game that I want to discuss and try and break down. This will be a much less lore-heavy video because there's only so much that we can theorize, but we will do so when we can. But hopefully this video will answer the question of, should we, as fans of mascot horror and animatronic horror in general, should we be excited for the release of Kandyland? Now, as previously mentioned, Kandyland began as an NFT project announced on the 20th of August 2022. For those that don't know, an NFT, or a non-fungible token, is a unique digital identifier recorded on a blockchain, making it the only one of its kind according to that particular blockchain. Make of them what you will. If you have heard of them, then you will know that in the internet and gaming sphere, and basically everywhere aside from crypto world, they are much derided and laughed at for a multitude of reasons. From the NFT value's price downfall to the JPEG screenshot discourse a few years ago, and the more serious matters around their effect on the environment based on the blockchain and how they are minted. But that's enough about that side of things. The reason this explanation is required is that Kandyland and Golden Lane Studios, the animation producer behind the Kandyland web series and upcoming game, will surely be aware of the reputational impact that making a game that was originally an NFT project was going to have, especially amongst the gaming community, as it is widely known what the general gaming community feel about NFTs. So whilst the funding of the game via the NFTs may potentially have returned a higher funding total, which may well be more traditional ways of fundraising for a game and a web series, etc., the question remains as to whether the game itself will be enough to shake off that negative attention it will already have on itself. I will point out as a side note though, it does seem that the decision to make the game was based on the feedback from their community. So make of that what you will, positive or negative for the game itself. Getting the next cause for concern out of the way. Look, as a fan of FNAF and mascot horror, I am fully aware of fan games and how common it is that some games take inspiration from others, and that is perfectly okay. We would not get some of the games we've got if they didn't take inspiration from older games. But let's talk about the obvious things, because it needs to be mentioned for Kandyland, as it again plays into a negative narrative for this game, and given some of the discourse we've already seen at the start of this year on inspiration versus plagiarism, it bears at least some discussion for this video. The main talking point being the most prominent character in the upcoming game, and in a lot of the promotional efforts for the project itself, Susie Snacktime. Of course, playing off the hugely popular Poppy playtime in name, but it's in her appearance that bears quite a resemblance to that of Baby from FNAF sister location. but honestly I think it's distinct enough that it doesn't bother me personally, not really. What does concern me, however, is the early development trailer. And this was the trailer for the game itself, where we could really learn the lore of this absolutely beautifully animated trailer again. And despite the excitement I have for it, there were a few too familiarities from FNAF that kind of made my eyes roll at times. The main one being the narrator guy. He's perhaps the owner of Kandyland. You know, he talks about his brother, but it's too early to tell with all that. It's his voice. His voice sounds so much like Afton from FNAF at the end of the Pizzeria Simulator clip, right at the end.
And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears.
It was supposed to be a magical place where nothing could ever go wrong. But as my brother once said, anything can be fixed with a little smile.
You cannot sit here and tell me that that wasn't done intentionally. Like, come on. Come on. And that just bothered me a lot, because they don't need to do that. Like, this game, this project, this thing, it can stand on its own. Like, it doesn't need... Like, why did it need to have a voice that sounded so much like Afton from FNAF? Like, it was just not necessary. Because, oh, look, this looks so good. There's so much potential here. Like, make it purposely different from Five Nights at Freddy's. Otherwise, it's just further ammunition for the die-hard FNAF fans that will inevitably come for this game. Now, with a lot of the negative stuff out the way, let's look at the early development trailer with our theory hats on, along with clues from any of the shorts, TikToks and web series episodes that Golden Lane Studios has put together. So we know that Kandyland is meant to be like a FNAF Disneyland sort of thing, sort of on an even bigger scale to that of like the security breach mall, if you like. You know, there's rides, attractions, shows, and probably incredibly overpriced hotels, with people making TikToks when they see the Disney castle. But as well as that, there are 4 main animatronic characters that customers can look forward to meeting when they arrive. Candy Kangaroo is the leader of the group. Tuki Toucan, not enamoured with the creativity of that name myself. Susie Snack Time, as previously mentioned. And finally, Mr. Smiles. Before we go into the trailer, let's just look at the original web series and promotional videos for Kandyland, which begins with Candy Kangaroo putting on a show for applauding spectators before going to a recharge station when a shady figure known as the Mouse Man, 3 guesses as to why, looks to be hacking the Kandyland system during the animatronics firmware update. This interruption seems to lead to a corruption in the system. Mouseman tails it out of there, see what I did there, and leaves Candy to sort of bug out before reawakening with ominous red eyes, of course signalling a nefarious change in his system. Episode 2 sees us introduced to Susie Snacktime, who is greeting patrons at Kandyland before hearing a whimpering child close by. One other thing I spotted in this scene, however, was Mouseman, just sort of kicking back, watching the animatronics, which makes me think that this is prior to him hacking the system and messing stuff up, but I keep contradicting myself based on what happens in the next scene. So we then see Susie try to help the child before what looks to be a similar issue, of which my first thought would be the corruption from the failed firmware update, which kicked in episode 1, with her eyes flashing red and her face falling off, showing her metallic mouth. But more logically, if Mouseman had done this hack, surely he wouldn't be standing around in the park chilling. He would have, left, you'd have thought. Which means that what happened to Susie may be something else entirely. This theory has to do with the Season 1 trailer, which I'll bring up later, so we'll come back to this episode in a bit. Episode 3 introduces the magician Tuki Tukun, who sees Susie in her malfunction state, still missing her mouth part, with her scarily remarking,
Hi there.
Now onto that early development trailer. We see Susie Snacktime seemingly wandering the area after waking up in what appears to be a rundown Kandyland, and potentially what's happening in the game, what preceded in the web series. And what I find exciting is that it does give us vibes that we would be playing as Susie, which I think would be a very cool way to go for the game itself. You know, rather than being maybe another helpless child, or a hiding human, or a security guard, you're an animatronic with wheelies. You can sort of skate around and get away from the corrupted animatronics. That could be kind of cool. The rest of the trailer is showing various shots of different areas and scenes with Mr. Smiles clearly being the antagonist of this particular area. The purple guy narrator telling us many things, such as this shouldn't have happened, and how they wouldn't do as they were told, clearly referring to the animatronics, we think. He then references his brother, who probably helped build Kandyland and is probably the soul possessed into Mr. Smiles, but that's just a guess at this point.
But as my brother once said, anything can be fixed with a little smile.
Now we move on to the official trailer for Kandyland web series Season 1. And again, major respect to Golden Age Studios. Like, I can't get over the quality again. Like, I will keep bashing you over the head by saying about how well it looks, and like the score and everything is just brilliant. This dropped in the first week of January. Please go and watch it. It is like Hollywood worthy, like no cap. I mean, look, we see Mr. Smiles sliding down the lift shaft at full speed going after the mouse man. Like, come on, that just looks so good. So the trailer begins with the narration by Mouseman, who provides a real motive for being the true villain of the story. He attended Kandyland when he was young, and there's only really one shot where we might learn why exactly he chose to get revenge on Kandyland and its animatronics. It's this one here where it appears Susie may have dropped, pushed, or sort of failed to help, I guess, Mouse Boy, before he seemingly falls into some very supervillain-esque vat of acid sort of stuff. You get what I mean? Maybe it's why he wears the mask as well now. Not just a thought. But this is where I want to call back to earlier in the video in episode 2 of the web series, where determining if Susie was either affected by the hacked system or that she has something separate happening to her compared to the rest. In the scene in episode 2, her mouthpiece falls off and her eyes change colour. She remarks two specifically separate things in what seems like two separate modes, or two separate consciousnesses, if you like. The first one is and the second one is
Help me.
I theorise that Susie's memory of Mouseboy falling has been somewhat cemented in her animatronic mind, in her system. Maybe Susie told him to stay as he got lost, and during the accident that led him to falling into the vat of acid, he's the one saying, "Help me." So that event is potentially the most key event in the story so far, and Susie is at the centre of it. Did she push him off the railing? Was she ordered to? Was it a complete accident? The title of the episode gives us one idea, but perhaps her AI has developed a consciousness on its own, and she potentially feels bad for what happened, and the game is her trying to atone for that mistake. You know, this led to the downfall of Kandyland. It led to the destruction of it, because he clearly, according to the season trailer, set it on fire. And it may also explain why she looks to be the protagonist of the game. It is a good justification for why we would be playing with Susie in the first place. Moreover, what I find really interesting about this trailer is that it looks like the animatronics are the good guys trying to combat the Mouseman villain. This is something distinctly different in the genre, and again another good narrative to take. And Mouseman seems to have Iron Manned himself a suit to legit punch out Tuki Tukum. I mean, I don't blame him either. Candy Kangaroo gives a lovely little speech with trumpets in the background about fighting to protect Kandyland. That also really gives a sharp sort of swap on perspective for these characters and the game as a whole. I think it adds a lot of potential depth to these particular animatronics, maybe how they work and what their motivation or the system within their motivations is. What could potentially be really good for Kandyland, assuming they follow through on everything that the manifesto and all of their vision, all that stuff promises, which I don't think there's any reason to assume otherwise at this point in time, is that the web series will seemingly continue to follow the events that led up to the start of the game, specifically like the closure of Kandyland. And then of course you'll have the game side of it, which will of course follow on from that. This could be like a really interesting sort of tandem between both the web series and the game, and allow for characters and potentially some stuff that may get missed in one of the media to be built on in the other. For example, if little information was given on Mr. Smiles in the web series, which is definitely the case at the minute, then the narrative for the game, at least to begin with, focuses on him as the antagonist. Perhaps the game ends up being episodic as well, which for this particular thing might work again in tandem with the web series. It would also give the game a lot more depth and story and help with the world building, and also be great for lore theorists and people like me. But honestly, I do think that could be something really, really cool for the game and the web series itself. So to come back to my original question earlier in the video, which is, should we as fans of FNAF and mascot horror, should we be excited for the release of Kandyland? And, well, frankly, yes, I think 100% we should be. You know, I'll be honest, that Kandyland Season 1 trailer genuinely blew my mind. That it is animated to the highest possible quality. It's got a fantastic score, right out of a sort of like an action horror film. The voice acting, I didn't even talk about that, which is brilliant, I think. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, aside from Purple Guy's voice in there for some reason. And everything at the minute looks like this game could be something special, like it could be really good. But there's a key word in that sentence I just said, and it was looks. This looks like it could be something special, because I do think that the game will be very important to the success of the Kandyland brand, even with the web series doing what it's doing. So for me, they absolutely have to nail the game, specifically the game mechanics as well. If it's a walking simulator, I'll admit I'll be a little disappointed. It has to nail an atmosphere, a story, you know, all in all, it just needs to make sure that it isn't like a security breach copy and paste, you know. It needs to be different. For the record, I don't think that's the case, but I just wanted to compare something to, because it kind of feels like it could be security breachy, if you get what I mean. And also, you know, let's not beat around the bush. Whatever you may think about the origins of the project and how it was funded through NFTs and stuff like that, there can be no denying how impressive the web series is visually. Golden Lane Studios have done unbelievable work, and from the early development trailer of the game, it looks like it could be something to look forward to. I'm not aware if Golden Lane have previously been in game development before, but that has not stopped other amazing game developers from creating works of art. So I will be keeping a close eye on Kandyland, and will certainly be playing it when it drops, as it should have some discourse online, be it positive or negative. And we all know how well that ends up for games that people like to argue about online.